Hey, good morning, everybody. We're on the record. We are outside the presence of the jury to discuss the admissibility of the body-worn cam of which witness is it, Mr. Nelson?
Chang.
All right, and I have had a chance to review it. Mr. Frank, the state had an objection?
Good morning, Your Honor. Yes, we do have objections to the body-worn camera video. As I indicated to counsel last night, we would object to admission of Officer Chang's body-worn camera video after the time stamp of 1:15:35. That, as I think I tried to point out, is that Zulu time thing rather than the regular time that the MPDs are in. But it's also running time 5:12 on the scale below. Within that first 5:12, there is a particular piece that we need to talk about because Officer Chang sits in his squad car and runs Mr. Floyd's name while his body cam is looking right at the screen. And information about Mr. Floyd pops up. Some of that is actually you're able to read. And because this, if it's made an exhibit, would be public, we think it's inappropriate to have information about Mr. Floyd on that screen available as an exhibit or generally to the public. So somehow that has to be obscured. We don't care if a black box is put over it if it's obscured in some way. But it's within that portion of the rest of the video we recognize is admissible and relevant. Because that time frame is the incident itself. Officer Chang arrives, interacts with the two officers and Mr. Floyd as they go over. After Officer Chang comes back over to the Dragon Walk side of 38th Street, he admits in a statement he no longer sees what's going on over there. Because this is a reasonable officer standard, as we all know, what happens after the restraint and across the street on 38th is simply irrelevant to the issues at hand. So after that point in the video is where we believe it reasonably loses any relevance. After that point, of course, there's audio, and Officer Chang speaks to the two individuals that were passengers in the car, and it's just full of hearsay. And some of that would be offered to prove, we believe, the truth of the matters asserted in those statements about what happened. So it's full of hearsay after that. There is a moment where Officer Chang towards the end is standing around as the officers do some follow-up, and this court allowed video of that time period as relevant to conducting or finishing their investigation. So I see where the court might find that particular period of Officer Chang's video to have some relevance. So in that sense, we would object to that portion, really as cumulative, because of course the better video of that has already been admitted with Officer Chauvin's body cam during that time period when Officer King comes out. I believe that was the court's ruling about why that's relevant. It shows something about the intentions of their investigation. So our objections are being able to read the screen in Officer Chang's squad car if he pulls up the information about Mr. Floyd. After 1:15:35 is simply not relevant. It's full of hearsay and potentially a cumulative objection as well. Thank you.
If we were to characterize this as bystander video of the bystanders near the Dragon Walk, who were the people that Mr. Floyd was with earlier that day, or earlier before this going into the store, how is it different from the bystander videos that the state offered and played with regard to statements that were made? And
the other bystanders are part of the incident. Certainly the defense has regularly cross-examined about the tone of voice of those bystanders and their effect, apparently, on Mr. Chauvin at the scene. They are part of the incident itself. They cannot really be separated from the issues involved in the restraint and the reasonableness of it. And I fully expect that's why there was no objection to that. This is a video of across the street. In my review of the video, you can't even hear what's going on in this video until the ambulance has come and gone, and one of the witnesses starts to walk this way, towards the Dragon Walk. So it does not capture the relevant interactions and portions of the incident.
Okay, Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I would break Mr. Chang's video into kind of three relevant sections, or three pertinent sections, I should say. The first being the initial reaction as described by Mr. Frank, the first approximate 5 minutes of the video. And then there is a period of time, a second period of time, where Officer Chang is dealing with the passengers. And then the third part of the video I would characterize as the occurrences after the ambulance has arrived and left, and what happens there. In terms of the first section, I do believe that it is relevant to the analysis. It shows another perspective of what was happening at that particular moment. I would need to figure out fairly quickly how to get that blocked, how to get those portions of the computer screen blocked that contain information about Mr. Floyd. There's that section, and I don't think, subject to that redaction, I don't think the state apparently objects to that. The second part, I believe, is relevant because it shows another officer's reaction to what is going on. It shows other bystanders' reactions to what is going on. And you can see during that period that Officer Chang is pacing kind of back and forth, trying to split his attention between the passengers and also observing what's happening across the street. Again, in terms of the reaction to the crowd and the crowd growing more and more vociferous as time progresses. So I do think it's relevant because it shows it from a distance. It shows Officer Chang walking. It shows at scenes where people are standing on other sides of the street. It shows the traffic. It shows people slowing down and watching. There's a lot of information that can be gleaned from that segment. The third segment, I think, is also relevant because it demonstrates, again, the continuing efforts of the police and also the continuing interactions with the citizens who observed, and goes to, as is being alluded to, is that if the crowd was a distraction or the officers perceived this gathering of people, whether we want to call it a crowd or a group or whatever, whether the officers perceived that to be a risk or a threat, and how that may have continued and ultimately influenced officers' decisions. So I believe it is highly relevant. I do not believe it is hearsay in the sense of you don't hear anything, essentially very little that the officers say. The officers don't talk about what just happened over there, with one small exception relevant to Mr. Williams and Ms. Hansen. There's some comments there. I believe that part may already be in one of the other body cameras. I'd have to go back and double check. That being said, Your Honor, I don't think it's cumulative because it again shows a different perspective. It shows a reaction of another police officer and what he was doing. It shows the surroundings from a different perspective and is highly relevant to the trier of fact.
I have reviewed the entire thumb drive that contains the exhibit, and I do find that it is relevant and not cumulative to a certain point. I would note that the body cam includes video from a distance what is happening in front of Cup Foods, but also the timing of when the fire engine 17 shows up. And since the emergency EMS response has been litigated in this case and is relevant as to when EMS showed up, when the fire engine showed up, firefighter Hansen specifically described how she would assume it'd be within 3 minutes. This puts that in a time frame on the EMS call, and so that is relevant. And to the extent that there are any statements made I find they're not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, or to the extent they are, they fall into the residual exception, because these are people just making comments of their observations at the scene. There's no motive for them to lie or anything else, so they would certainly be reliable. They're not inculpatory in any way, and so I think it would fall into the 807 residual hearsay, even if it is offered for the truth of the matter asserted. But it does not appear to be that the state is trying, or the defense is trying to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So with that, I'm going to order that you redact the part when the officer is looking up on the computer. I think for today's purposes, you can simply fast forward through it 30 seconds or so when he's in, when you get to that point. That way the jury won't see it when you publish it today, but it's got to be redacted. You got to take it back, and before we submit this to the jury for deliberation, it has to be taken out. So basically, when he gets in the squad until when he gets back out of the squad. And I'll advise him that it's been edited to take out irrelevant materials up until the time the fire engine leaves. Anything after that is not really relevant. To some extent, it is cumulative, as the state has said. But up through the time the fire engine leaves is appropriate. So with that redaction in the middle and the ending after the fire engine leaves, the body-worn cam will be admissible.
I should be able to, in about 10 minutes, accomplish that.
All right. You can actually accomplish the redaction within 10 minutes?
I would just be cutting those clips out rather than trying to put some sort of black screen on.
No, that would be my preference.
So if I can have about 10 minutes, Your Honor.
Let's reconvene now. Let's bring the jury back at 9:30, and we'll start at 9:30. Yeah. This is your copy, Mr. Nelson? All right. We'll reconvene at 9:30. Anything else that we need to go over? All right. We're off the record then. audience about it. Does the state have an additional witness?
Your Honor, the state of Minnesota rests.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, are you ready to proceed? Call your first witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Scott Creighton.
Your Honor, prior to the testimony, we request the posture.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat. I have to delay just a little bit. Having trouble getting the computer to work, and there's something I have to read the jury, but you can be seated. All right. Hold on. Let me try and. My apologies. Hold on. All right, let's have you give your first, middle, and last name and spell each of your names.
My name is Scott Robbie Creighton, C-R-E-I-G-H-T-O-N.
Members of the jury, you are about to hear evidence of an occurrence involving George Floyd on May 6th, 2019. This evidence is being admitted solely for the limited purpose of showing what effects the ingestion of opioids may or may not have had on the physical well-being of George Floyd. This evidence is not to be used as evidence of the character of George Floyd. Mr. Nelson.
Mr. Creighton, by whom are you currently employed?
Your Honor, is there any way that we can, I could hear it a little louder? Could it be a little louder? I'm having difficulty. Sorry about that, sir.
No problem, sir.
I just want to make sure I hear all the questions.
Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay. By whom are you currently employed?
Right now, I'm currently retired. I'm not employed by anybody.
Prior to your retirement, by whom were you employed?
The City of Minneapolis Police Department,
And how long did you work for the City of Minneapolis Police Department?
28 years.
Can you describe for the jury generally the various roles that you had for the Minneapolis Police Department?
Yes, I will. I started in 1993. I started on the street working as a 911 responder. I did 6 years as a 911 responder, and then I transferred over to public housing for approximately 9 months as public housing officer. And then from there I went to the 4th Precinct and became a community response team member, involved as a street level narcotics investigator. I did that for 22 years.
All right. Now, were you on duty on May 6th of 2019?
Yes, I was.
If you had an opportunity to review various police reports and body-worn cameras from an incident on that date?
Yes, I have.
On that date at approximately 4 or just before 5 o'clock p.m., did you execute a traffic stop of a red Ford Explorer?
Yes, I did.
And did you approach the passenger side?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe just very briefly the initial interaction that you had with the passenger of that vehicle?
I approached the vehicle on the passenger side. The passenger window was down. I started giving the individual that was in the passenger seat commands several times. The passenger was unresponsive and non-compliant to my commands. I then had to physically reach in because I wanted to see his hands, because I couldn't see his hands. I reached in finally and grabbed his hand to put it up on the dash, and then that individual was taken from the vehicle and handcuffed.
Okay. Did you make any observations as to the passenger's behavior?
Could you repeat that question, sir? I'm sorry.
Did you make any additional observations as to the passenger's behavior?
Yeah, in my mind, his behavior was very nervous, anxious.
I will withdraw that question. In terms of, did you see the passenger do anything physically with his hands?
Yes, he turned away from me towards the driver's seat as continually as I was giving him commands to see his hands.
Did you draw your service weapon?
Yes, I did.
Did you observe the passenger put anything in his mouth?
Can you say that one more time, sir? I'm sorry.
Did you observe the passenger put anything in his mouth?
No, I didn't.
Did you, were you wearing a body-worn camera issued by the city of Minneapolis on that day?
Yes, I was.
And have you had an opportunity to review your body-worn camera prior to today's testimony?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, based upon the order, I would move to admit and publish Exhibit 1051.
All right. 1051 is received, subject to the motion in limine.
If we may publish.
Can you undo your seatbelt, sir? Sir, passenger, can you undo your seatbelt? Go ahead and undo your seatbelt.
Please, I don't want to get shot.
I don't plan on shooting you. I'm just saying, just take your time.
I ain't never seen a...
Okay, relax. Just undo your seatbelt. Let her take care of her guy. Just keep your hands out where I can see him. Hey! Let me... Keep your hands where I can fucking see him! Okay? Put them up on the dash. Put them on the dash. I'm not going to shoot you. Put your hands on the dash. Put your hands on the dash. The last time I'm going to tell you that. It's simple. He keeps moving his hands around. He won't listen to what I have to say.
Put your hands on
Okay.
top of your head.
Put them on your head.
Top of your head. Okay, man.
Open your mouth. Spit out what you got. Spit out what you got. I'm going to tase you. Spit it out. He's eating all
Don't you jerk away from me.
That was one yellow pill.
Put your hands behind your
That was one yellow pill, boss.
Okay, now slowly come on out.
Damn, man.
Hand on
Now
your
put
head.
your
Hand on your head.
Okay, relax then.
got beat up and everything before, man.
You're not going to get beat up or nothing. If you just follow what we're asking you to do.
Tell her I apologize to her, man. I apologize, man. I apologize.
Yeah.
Did you subsequently identify the driver of the passenger?
Yes, I did.
And who is that?
Mr. Floyd.
Your Honor, based on the court's ruling, I have no further questions for this witness.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Officer Creighton.
Good morning.
You testified that you were the officer who approached the passenger side of the vehicle. You approached George Floyd on May 6th of 2019, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And you had your gun drawn when you approached Mr. Floyd, isn't that right?
Yes, I pulled it, yes.
And when you approached Mr. Floyd, he said, "Don't shoot me, man, I don't want to get shot," right?
Something like that, yes.
You told him to undo his seatbelt, correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
And he did that, right?
Yes, he did.
And then you said, "Put your hands where I can see them," correct?
Yes.
And then he put his hands in the air?
Yes.
And then you told him to put his hands on the dash, is that right?
That's correct.
And that was when you grabbed his hand and forcibly put it on the dashboard of the vehicle, correct?
Fallen, yes.
And then the other officer with you on the other side of the vehicle changed that to put your hands on your head, correct?
That's correct.
And then he put his hands on his head, right?
That's correct, yes.
And there was one officer who said that they were going to tase him, right?
That's what I heard, yes.
And you were yelling pretty loud, correct?
Yes, I was, yes. It escalated real quick.
Some profanity as well, correct?
Yes.
And you had your gun drawn the whole time you were giving commands, right?
Once I started ordering him and he refused to show me his hands, yes, eventually it escalated where I pulled my gun, yes, ma'am.
And he was awake, correct?
What's that, ma'am?
Mr. Floyd was awake. Was he awake during this incident?
Yes.
He was conscious?
Yes.
He didn't appear to be in medical distress to you when you were pulling him out of the car, is that right? He was talking to you, he was standing up, is that right?
I don't know if it was specifically, sometimes he was talking, sometimes he was mumbling. He was incoherent in my mind a lot of the time during there.
But you got him out of the car and you handcuffed him, right?
That's correct, ma'am.
And he stood next to the car, right?
Yes, ma'am.
He asked you not to beat him up, correct?
That's correct, yes.
He was able to walk, right?
Yes, he was.
He continued to talk to you.
Yes.
Technology is not our friend today. Ms. Aldridge, if you would.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Creighton, you were describing that you got Mr. Floyd out of the car, correct?
Yes.
And he stood next to the car and you handcuffed him, correct?
Me and another officer had to physically handcuff him, yes.
And he didn't fall down, correct?
No, he didn't fall down.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Officer Creighton, there was another officer on the driver's side dealing with the driver,
Yes, that's correct, actually two.
and that officer was speaking to or giving commands to the driver
That's correct.
simultaneous to the time that you were giving commands to Mr. Floyd.
That's correct.
Did you hear the officer say, "Spit it out"?
I may have, yes. You'd have to see the video, and if that's what the video shows, then that's what occurred.
Okay. I have no further questions.
All right, anything further?
Your Honor. Officer Creighton, you were just asked some questions about what the other officers were doing. You were interacting with Mr. Floyd, correct?
Yes,
And while you were interacting with Mr. Floyd, he didn't collapse on the ground, correct?
wait a minute. What was the question? Can you speak up a little louder, ma'am?
While you were interacting with Mr. Floyd, he didn't collapse on the ground, correct?
No, he did not.
Well, the answer is stricken. The objection is sustained.
You were asked some questions about what the other officers were doing, correct?
That's correct.
Your attention was focused on Mr. Floyd, correct?
Yes, it was.
And Mr. Floyd didn't drop dead while you were interacting with him, correct?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Michelle Mosing.
You can just stand right there for a second. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth? Have a seat. And before you begin, if you could state your full name, spell each of your names, and then hold off, Mr. Nelson. Just give your full name and spell each name.
First name is Michelle, Michelle. Last name is Mosing, Moseng.
And if you're comfortable taking off the mask, I pretty much leave it up to you, but if that would make it easier to hear you, that would be appreciated. Members of the jury, this again is regarding an incident or an occurrence involving George Floyd on May 6, 2019. As I told you before, this evidence is being admitted solely for the limited purpose of showing what effects the ingestion of opioids may or may not have had on the physical well-being of George Floyd. This evidence is not to be used as evidence of the character of George Floyd. Mr. Nelson, you may inquire.
Thank you. Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
By whom are you currently employed?
I am retired.
Okay. Prior to your retirement, where were you employed?
I was a paramedic at Hennepin County Medical Center EMS.
How long were you a paramedic for Hennepin County?
Just under 34 years.
Okay. And can you describe the education that you had to become a paramedic?
I have a 2-year degree in emergency medical care and rescue from Mankato State, and then actually got an additional registered nursing. I graduated from St. Mary's University in '91.
Okay. And so you worked as a paramedic for Hennepin County for the entirety of your career, or did you have other employment?
I actually worked for a year in Dakota County for 1 year, and then I have worked at Hennepin, or had worked at Hennepin ever since.
Fair to say you've gone to a large number of calls during the course of your career.
Yes.
All right. And you may not remember every specific detail about every call, correct?
No.
And as a paramedic, do you maintain records about each call that you go to in order to assess the patient's care?
Yes, we do a run sheet or a patient medical record that we hand off at the emergency room.
Now,
If you can just speak up just a little bit.
Sorry.
No problem.
prior to your testimony today, have you had an opportunity to review a run sheet from May 6th of 2019 involving George Perry Floyd?
Yes.
Do you recall all of those details off the top of your head now?
No.
All right. Now, in terms of your recollection of May 6th of 2019, were you summoned to the Minneapolis Police Department
Yes, precinct 4.
to attend to Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Upon arriving at the 4th precinct, did you talk to Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Did you learn information from Mr. Floyd about what he had consumed and the time frame he had consumed it in?
Yeah, it was quite hard to assess him. He was upset and confused. Some of the things he said were...
I'm going to strike the answer as non-responsive. If you could perhaps leave.
Certainly. Did Mr. Floyd, were you able to learn that Mr. Floyd had consumed some narcotics that day?
Yes.
What did he tell you specifically about what narcotics he had taken and when he had taken them?
He told me that he had been taking multiple, like every 20 minutes, and it was a I don't remember if it was Oxy or Percocet, but it was a opioid based. It wasn't real consistent with his behavior. At that point, it was real elevated and agitated.
No, I'm gonna.
The last statement about agitation is stricken as non-responsive. You can just wait for the next question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But he had informed you he had taken some sort of an opioid every 20 minutes or something like that, correct?
And then another one as the officer came up.
Okay, so he told you that he had taken a pill at the time the officers were apprehending him.
Correct.
Did you do a physical assessment of Mr. Floyd at that time?
Yes.
Specifically, did you take his blood pressure?
Yes, I took a set of vitals.
Would you agree that your first vitals were taken at approximately 1:34 and 59 seconds?
Without looking at the run sheet, I wouldn't know for sure.
Would it refresh your recollection to review the run sheet?
Yes.
May I approach the witness room?
Thank you. Okay, I've written on here that, yeah, it was 1334 was the first recorded vital signs.
That refreshes your recollection?
Yes. Did you need it back?
Probably will be for the
I'd like to testify from memory. If you need to refresh your memory with that, just let us know and we'll allow you to refresh your memory. But otherwise, testify to your memory as best you can.
Okay.
Thank you.
At approximately 13:34, that's 1:34 p.m., agreed? You took his vitals, correct?
Correct.
And that would include his blood pressure at the time?
Yes.
And did you record what his blood pressure was at that time?
Yes, it was 216 over 160.
Did you ultimately make recommendations to transport Mr. Floyd to the hospital?
Based on that and other issues.
Okay. And ultimately, was he brought to the hospital?
Eventually.
All right. I believe that's all I have, Your Honor.
Ms. Eldridge.
morning, Ms. Mosing.
Good morning.
You provided treatment to George Floyd on May 6, 2019, correct?
Correct.
Is that
Yes.
right? And you were concerned about his blood pressure at that time, correct?
That was one of the things.
And in the course of your treatment of him, he explained that his high blood pressure wasn't something new, right?
Yeah, initially, he denied medical issues, but then when I discovered his blood pressure, I specifically asked again, and he said yes, he had a history of hypertension and had not been taking his medication.
And he said he hadn't been taking his blood pressure medication for months, correct?
Correct.
And he told you that he swallowed some pills, right?
Yes.
Approximately 7 Percocet, correct?
I documented, 7 to 9 every 20 minutes or so for a while.
And Percocet is a brand name, right?
Yes.
Is that oxycodone and acetaminophen?
Yes.
And it's used to treat pain, correct?
Correct.
You testified that it's an opioid, yes?
Correct.
So he told you that he had been taking those pills throughout the day, right?
Yes, and I asked him why. He said he's because he was addicted.
He told you he was addicted, and he responded to your questions about taking the pills, correct?
Correct.
And he was able to walk, correct?
Yes.
He was able to stand up.
Correct.
And you wanted him to go to the hospital, right?
Correct.
And he didn't feel like he wanted to go to the hospital, correct? He was resistant to going to the hospital, right?
I know he was real resistant to get on our bed. It was hard to tell exactly what he was upset about.
I'm going to object at this point, Your
I'm
Honor.
sorry.
Just with respect to going to the hospital, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm going to limit your question to the question I asked to that. He didn't want to go to the hospital, right?
I'll say yes.
It took some time to convince him to go to the hospital,
Yes.
correct? And you indicated that he told you he had been addicted to opioids, correct?
Correct.
And he had been addicted to opioids at that point for 1.5 years, right?
I am not aware of that.
But he didn't feel like he needed to go to the hospital.
He didn't want to go with us at that point.
And you were referred to your run report, right? The record that you keep in terms of the treatment of patients. You see that up there, correct?
Yes.
And according to your run report, you documented that Mr. Floyd was alert, correct?
Yes.
And that he obeyed commands, correct?
Eventually.
That's what's in your report, right? Correct?
Correct.
And that he had an appropriate response to stimulation,
Correct.
yes?
Correct.
He wasn't nauseous or vomiting when you were treating him, right?
No.
His respiratory rate was normal, yes?
It was elevated at times.
You wrote respiratory effort normal in your report, correct?
At the beginning, yes. His effort was normal. It was increased at times.
And throughout your documentation, you wrote respiratory effort normal, correct?
Correct.
At 1334, at 1409, at 1426. All those notes, you indicated that his respiratory effort was normal, correct?
Correct.
He was not in respiratory distress, correct?
No.
His blood oxygen level was normal, right?
Correct.
His pulse was normal, correct?
Yes.
His heart rhythm was regular or normal, right?
Correct.
His EKG was normal.
Correct.
He had a normal rhythm, the sinus rhythm, which is the rhythm of a normal, healthy heart, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated that you had been worried about high blood pressure for the possibility of a stroke, right?
Among other things, yes.
But he didn't have a stroke, right?
Didn't have any indications that we were picking up at the time.
He didn't have a stroke while you were with him.
No.
He was never given Narcan, correct?
Correct.
He didn't stop breathing.
No.
His heart didn't stop.
No.
He didn't go into cardiac arrest.
No.
He didn't go into a coma.
No.
And you took him to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
And he was monitored for 2 hours and released right after, right?
I don't know.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. Sure. As a jury, we're going to take a lawyerly 5-minute break, which means it'll probably be 10. But let's go with 5 minutes for now. Thank you. All right, we're on the record outside the hearing of the jury. Hey man, come on up. All right, you can just have a seat for now. If you testify, I'll place you under oath, but otherwise, we're just going to have a discussion a little bit here. So, but we do need to hear you so that the court reporter can take everything down. So, you have been subpoenaed by the defense.
I can't even really.
Let me do that. You've been subpoenaed by the defense to answer certain questions about being with George Floyd on May 25th, 2020, what you observed about his physical condition at various points in Cup Foods, and basically a time frame on when you were with him that day and what you observed about him. Specifically, I think focusing mostly on the time in Cup Foods, but then also in the motor vehicle before the police came to the window.
Yep.
Okay? And you're willing to answer those questions
Yes.
about George
Yes.
Floyd? Okay. The parties also have the right to ask you, in order to test whether your perceptions are accurate, on whether you were under the influence of drugs or alcohol that day. Are you willing to answer that question?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I or him?
Are you willing to answer the question
Well,
whether you were under the influence of
yes.
drugs or alcohol?
Yes, I was not.
Okay. We're not going to be eliciting an opinion from you whether George Floyd was under the influence, just for how he looked.
Okay.
And how he acted.
Yep.
But not an opinion about whether he was under the influence.
Okay.
But the lawyers, in order to make sure that the jury knows whether to consider your evidence and how much weight to give it, is whether you were sober or under the influence. Are you willing to answer that question?
Yes.
Okay. Now you understand, I don't find that those questions would expose you to criminal liability, but you do have a Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate yourself. Do you need time to talk to a lawyer? Or?
No.
And I have limited the lawyers to those topics so as not to get anything that might tend to incriminate you that you're not expecting. Okay?
Yep.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Do you need time to talk to a lawyer? Okay, ready to go then?
Yes.
All right. What we're going to do is we're going to bring the jury back in, and then I'm going to have you stand up so I can swear you in, and then we'll go from there. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, great. Let's bring in the jury. And you can just remain seated when the jury comes in.
Oh, you want to stand up?
You can stay seated.
Oh.
I'll ask you to stand to be sworn, but just follow my directions, you'll be fine. You can stay seated. And be seated. Okay, Mr. Nelson, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Shawanda Hill.
Ms. Hill, if you could stand right in the witness chair, or actually, there's fine. You could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, have a seat, please. And before we begin, we're going to have you state your full name, spelling each of your names.
Shawanda, Shawanda, Renee, Renee, Hill, Hill.
Mr. Nelson?
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Hill.
Hi.
Thank you for being here with us today. I just have a few questions about May 25th of 2020. Do you recall that date?
Yes.
On that date, were you at the Cup Foods located in Minneapolis?
Yes. Yes.
Did you run into anybody that you knew while you were there?
Yes. George Floyd.
And while you were at the Cup Foods, or in the Cup Foods, did you have an opportunity to observe Mr. Floyd's behavior, demeanor, things of that nature?
Yes.
How would you describe Mr. Floyd's behavior while inside of the Cup Foods?
Happy, normal, talking, alert.
Okay. Did he offer to give you a ride?
Yes.
A ride to wherever it was
My
you were
house.
going? And so did you go to his car with him?
Yes.
Once you got into the car, did you observe any changes to his demeanor?
When we were in the car for the first like 8 minutes, we were talking and, you know what I'm saying, hugging, you know what I'm saying, talking about what we were about to do. And then I got a phone call. And so I was on the phone for the rest of the time until the little boys came to the truck, to the car. He fell asleep at that time.
So at some point during the course of the time that you were in the car with Mr. Floyd, Mr. Floyd suddenly fell asleep,
Yes.
right? And the phone call you received, was that from your daughter?
Yes.
And so you were talking with your daughter during that time?
Yes.
And you described, would you agree that at some point, you said some little boys, are those employees of the
Yes.
store?
Sorry, yes.
That's okay. The store employees came and approached the car, correct?
Yes.
And at that point, Mr. Floyd suddenly fell asleep?
He was already asleep.
He was already sleeping?
Yes. When they came to the car. And when they came there, I tried to wake him up. They tried to wake him up. I tried to wake him up over and over. And his friend tried to wake him up. And he woke up. Then he'll say something. He made a little gesture, you know, and nodded back off.
Okay.
He did that a couple times.
Was that a kind of a sudden change from how you observed him in the store to the car?
Yes, but he already told me in the store he was tired because he had been
I'm
working.
going to object. There is an objection.
Hold on. Objection, Collins?
Leading, yes, the answer is stricken.
Overruled.
And so at some point, did the store clerks leave the side of the car?
Yes, I told him that I would wake him up and send him in there because I didn't have the money on me. I used my money. So.
Okay. And did you continue to try to rouse
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Wait till he finishes the questions so that we don't overlap, okay? Because the court reporter is taking everything down, it's really hard.
The overlap.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. So did you continue to try to awaken Mr. Floyd?
Yes, I tried a couple times, but then, you know, I just let it go for a minute because I was back on the phone and
All right.
you want to hear the rest of it.
And did the store clerks come back to the car a second time?
No.
And were you, at some point, the police officers approached the car?
Yes.
And Mr. Floyd was aroused by the police?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Rank.
Good morning, Ms. Hill. I just have a couple of follow-up questions for you, okay?
Yes.
So during the period that you were with Mr. Floyd in the store, he was, you said he was alert,
Yes.
friendly,
Yes.
talkative,
Happy talking. Yes.
and
Laugh, hugging.
yeah. And when you went out to the store, he walked by himself out to the store?
Yes.
In fact, did a little dance as he went out to the car?
Yes.
We just have to make sure that you wait
Yes.
till the question's done so we aren't talking over each other, okay? I know it's a hard habit to break, but we just have to be careful with that, okay? And when you got back to the car, at some point he nodded off.
Yes.
But you were able to wake him, correct?
Yes.
And talk to him.
Yes. But he wasn't that coherent at the time.
He was just awakening.
Yes.
And nodded off again?
Yes.
And at some point, the police officers walked up, correct? Yes?
Yes.
And then he, well, you woke him up when the police officers walked up, correct?
Yes.
And so then he was awake.
Yes. You just want me to say yes or no, explain what do you want me to do?
Well, explain.
I want to explain. Okay, thank you. So when I tried to wake him up, he woke up the second time. I said, Floyd, the police is here. It's about the $20 bill wasn't real. I kept saying, baby, get up. The police was out. So he looked, and we looked to the right, and he had the police. He tapped on the window with a flashlight. And I'm like, Floyd. And so he turned back around again. He's like, what? And I was like, baby, that's the police. Open the door, roll down the window, whatever he told him to do. So he looked back, and when he seen the man had the gun at the window when we looked back to him. So he instantly grabbed the wheel, and he was like, please don't kill me. Please don't shoot me. What did I do? Just tell me what I did. Please don't kill me. Please don't shoot me. And I'm like, Floyd, baby, it's not. You said explain. I'm trying to explain what state he was in, sir.
I did. And I have to ask some questions. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I really am.
It's all right.
But I want to go back and just cover one thing quick, because where were you sitting in the vehicle?
In the back right passenger seat.
Okay. And so when officers came,
Back passenger seat.
were there two officers that came to the vehicle?
Yes.
So one came to the passenger side and one to the driver's side?
Yes.
So initially you saw one officer to your right on the passenger side, correct?
No, I was up I'm trying to wake him up, so I'm in the middle, like at the time, when the police were there. That's how I was able to see him too, we both looked at the same time.
And when he was, during this time period, coming out from Cup Foods and being in the vehicle, did he complain of shortness of breath at all?
No.
Did he complain of chest pains at all?
No.
And other than being sleepy or nodding off a little bit, did he seem abnormal to you in any way?
Not at all.
And did he seem startled when the officer pulled a gun on him?
Very.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. While you were in the car, or prior to getting in the car, Mr. Floyd appeared to you to be normal, correct?
Yes.
When he got in the car, he fell asleep, correct?
We talked for a while, then he fell asleep.
And then ultimately, you had to make several efforts to try to wake him up.
Yes.
I'm nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. We appreciate you coming in. You are excused.
Thank you.
And actually, you can go right out the doors.
Your Honor, the defense calls Peter Chang.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat, please. And before you begin, if you could give us your full name, spelling each of your names.
Peter Chang. First name is Peter, P-E-T-E-R. Last name is Chang, C-H-A-N-G.
Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Mr. Chang, by whom are you currently employed?
I'm employed with the Minneapolis Park Police.
Are you a licensed peace officer?
Yes.
Could you please describe the training and experience that you have to the jury?
Training, I went through the Minneapolis Police Academy. Prior to that, I did skills for a metropolitan state. Passed my skills, I went to Police Academy through Minneapolis. After passing the, academy, I went through a FTO phase.
Is that field training?
Yes.
Okay.
And that consists of 5 months. After passing that, I went on the street.
Okay. And you have you spent your entire law enforcement career with the Minneapolis Park Police Department?
Yes.
And how long have you been a licensed peace officer?
About to be my 4th year in August.
Were you on duty back on May 25th of 2020 in your capacity as a patrol officer for the Park Police?
Yes.
And did you ultimately respond to a call at approximately 8 o'clock p.m. to the Cup Foods store?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury how it is that you became a part of this incident?
I was stationed at a park close by. I heard 320 called out that they were taking out one, I believe, and then I heard a lot of background noises, and I heard dispatch asking for assistance. I was one of the closer squads, so I self-assigned to that call to assist 320.
Now, let me ask you, is it common for Minneapolis Park Police to assist on calls with the Minneapolis Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. Your jurisdiction generally is within the parks?
Yes.
However, you are able to back up or assist officers with the Minneapolis Police Department, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Let me ask you one quick question about your experience. You said that you went to the Minneapolis Police Academy, right?
Yes.
Even though you were looking to become a Minneapolis Park Police officer?
Yes.
Do the Park Police and the Minneapolis Police Department, you have the same academy?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Do you have the same field training process?
I believe so, yes.
And then do you participate in continuing education in service as a police officer?
Yes, we do.
Is that also in conjunction with the Minneapolis Police Department?
Yes.
All right. Now, after you, so you responded to the Cup Foods location?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury initially what you observed and what you did?
When I got there, I initially stopped in front of Cup Foods, and I observed the 2 officers, 320, across the street. So I drove my squad across the street and parked. I got out of my car, 320, one officer stated they were code 4. I got out of the car. I observed, I believe, Officer Chang with one of the individual who I later identified was Floyd. Floyd was in handcuffs, sitting on the ground, leaning against the wall, and Officer Lane was with 2 individuals by the car.
Now, let me ask you quickly, did you know either Officers King or Lane prior to this incident?
No.
Okay. Now, were you asked to do something at that point?
Once I got out of my car, Officer Kane asked me to identify Floyd in our system. So I just went back to my squad car and identified Floyd.
All right. And what happened next, sir?
Once I was in my car identifying Floyd, I observed Officer Lane and Kane assisting Floyd towards their car, which was in front of Cup Foods.
Now, can you describe where, that would be Squad 320, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And can you describe where Squad 320 was parked and where you were parked?
320 was parked in front of Cup Foods. They were on the northbound lane facing southbound. and then I was basically across the street on 38th. I believe the front of my squad car was facing eastbound on 38th towards Dragon Walk. Yeah.
Did you then move your squad car?
Yes, once I identified Floyd, I looped, because I observed Officer Lane and Kane assisting Floyd to their squad car. I looped my squad car around and parked in front of their squad car.
So your cars were sort of nose to nose?
Yes.
At an angle though, right?
Yes.
All right. What happened next?
After that, I got on my squad car. I observed Officer Kane and Lane, I guess, pinning Floyd against the squad car, so I wanted to go assist. But once I approached them, Officer Lane told me to go watch the car, and I did that.
And you did that?
Yes.
And then were you, where did you go in relation to the car?
The car was parked on 38th Street, so I basically went across the street to the car.
Okay. And what did you do then?
When I approached the car, I observed the two individuals that initially, when I arrived, I saw Officer Lane with, I guess, reaching inside the car. And I basically just told them to back away from the car, not reach inside or get anything from the car.
So you were monitoring what the two passengers were doing at that time?
Yes.
Was your attention focused on what Officers King and Lane were doing, or was it focused on what the passengers were doing?
It was more focused on the vehicle and the two passengers.
Okay. Now, at some point, did you observe another squad car arrive?
Yes.
And can you describe that interaction that you had with those officers?
I believe that was Squad 330. They arrived coming westbound at 38th. They parked in front of the SUV, and I basically just directed them towards 320, which they were in front of Foods.
Okay. Did you know the officers, either of the officers in Squad 320?
No,
Excuse me, 330.
I'm sorry.
330, not 320.
No, I probably met Officer Tao a couple times, but no relationship.
Okay. And you'd never met Officer Chauvin prior to that?
No.
All right. Now, what happened next?
Basically went across the street, and then I assisted 320. And again, my main focus was just the car and the two individuals.
And as Mr. Floyd and the officers were across the street, did you notice any changes in the area?
Yeah, as there was a crowd, and I guess the crowd was becoming more loud and aggressive. A lot of yelling across the street.
Did that cause you any concern?
Concern for the officer's safety, yes.
Did you go over to try to help them?
No, because I guess my job was to watch the car and the two individuals that were by the car.
Did you know whether the car had been searched at all by officers?
At that time, no.
Were you concerned about that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I am assuming that on this day you were in a uniform similar to what a Minneapolis police officer would wear?
Yes.
So you were fully uniformed?
Yes.
With all of the duty belt and all of the things that are on the duty belt, right?
Yes.
You were driving a marked squad car?
Yes.
And does your department require you to wear a body-worn camera?
Yes.
Was your body-worn camera active and recording this event?
Yes.
Now, have you had an opportunity at this point to review the footage that was taken by your body-worn camera?
I have.
And does that appear to be a fair and accurate representation of the things you observed?
Yes.
Now, in terms of as the crowd or the group of people were congregating around Squad 320, did you notice anything in terms of the tone or tenor of the voices of those people?
They were very aggressive. Yes. Aggressive towards the officers, yes.
Did the volume increase?
Yes.
Okay. And so how were you reacting? How were you splitting? How were you reacting to that?
Yes, I was focused on the car, but then it distracts me, and I was concerned for the officer's safety too, so I just kept an eye on the officers and the car and the individuals,
okay.
Passengers.
And if we can just show I'm going to show a couple of parts of your body-worn camera. And And if you just look at the screen in front of you, does this appear to be your body-worn camera?
Yes.
And I note at the top right-hand corner here, there is a date. What is the date?
May 26.
Of 2020?
Yes.
And I notice a time here of 1:10:25Z. Do you know what that means?
I do not.
Okay. Are you familiar with Greenwich Mean Time?
No.
Oh, okay. So you don't know why the timestamp, you said you were, what time would you originally estimate that you were dispatched to this call, or that you were assigned to this call?
I'll say approximately 8 o'clock.
Okay. Obviously, there's a time difference here that says 1:10 p.m. And you have no idea why that would be.
No.
Now, but it does appear to be your body-worn camera from that day.
Yes.
The same thing that you've observed before.
Yes.
All right. Then, Your Honor, I would move to admit Exhibit 1054.
Subject to the court's prior rulings, 1054 is received.
So we're going to watch about 3 minutes of your body camera here. Permission to publish?
I got one at home. All right, what's your name? George. George Perry Floyd. I don't know what's going on. I just came over to get my phone. Spell it for me. Yep. R-G-E. Last name? Floyd. That's not it. 330, I'm over 330. F-L-O-Y-D. Because he's been shot before. Date of birth. October 14th. 73. Man, I got shot last time. Same late, man. This name? George Floyd. I don't want no problem. Ain't nothing.
Officer Chang, does that represent that initial interaction that you had with officers King, Lane, Mr. Floyd, and the passengers of the vehicle?
Yes.
All right. And did you then, in fact, use your computer to enter in the name of George Floyd?
Yes.
All right. And after you did that, what happened next?
Again, I observed Officer Lane and Kane assist George Floyd to their squad car, which was in front of Cup Foods. So I looped my squad car around so I can be closer, and I got out of the car, and again, I observed Officer Lane and Kane pinning Floyd against their squad car, so I went to assist, but once I approached them, Officer Lane told me to go watch the car.
All right. I'm going to, if we could take this down, Your Honor. And in front of you, Officer, I'm again showing you part of your body camera footage.
Yes.
And it appears to be the same date, same after you've run the information and looped the car around.
Yes.
And does this video accurately reflect what you saw and saw that day?
Yes.
I would move, Your Honor, for the admission of Exhibit 1055, which is an approximately 23-minute, 24-minute part of Mr. Chang's body camera.
Subject to the court's prior rulings, 1055 is received.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Watch that car.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't want you guys grabbing anything from the car, okay? Leave the car alone. Leave the car alone.
Yes, sir.
All right, now.
He just got sick. There's his phone.
All right. Just leave the car alone.
Okay.
2740 Minneapolis. How you doing?
Good. Good, good. What'd you guys take out of the car?
Get cigarettes.
Cigarettes? You got your personal items?
This is mine. I had it in my hand. This is my phone.
Okay.
His phone in there.
Whose car is this?
That's his friend's car, a female name. I was trying to think of the girl name.
Okay.
Yeah. It's his friend's car. Damn, man.
Who is he to you guys?
Silver.
That's my ex.
Your ex. Okay.
And I just seen him in the store, so he was going to give me a ride home.
Okay.
I just came to get my phone fixed.
He was giving her and I a ride. Giving her and I trying to get us a ride.
Okay. Just stay put, all right? I don't want anybody near his car.
Is anybody going to check my name? Because my daughter on her way here to get me.
All right, where's the ID?
I don't have it. I gave him my
All right,
name.
why don't you stand right there, okay?
They know who gave him the money. It wasn't us.
Okay.
320 to your visa.
Did you guys give my partners their names or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, we already did.
You guys did? Okay. Did he write it down?
Yep.
You wrote down everything? Okay, stay put, all right? Let's see what my partner does.
Damn, he still won't get in the car. Just sit down, dude. Dude, they got to push him in this car. Look, he's fighting to get out.
That's fucking resistance.
What is he doing? Now he going to jail. All he had to do was not a nigga going to jail. Can y'all give him
him his phone, though, please?
We'll see what happens, all right? You guys just stay put. Tell my partners to come back here.
Look, they still fighting. Hey. Oh, man, what is he doing? Oh, they going all around.
You guys don't have your IDs on you?
I already gave him one, man.
Huh?
I gave it to him, man.
Why don't I see your ID again?
I gave it to him.
He has your ID?
Yeah. And I gave him my name because I didn't even bring a purse or nothing.
All right, well,
came to
just
get
stay
my
put here,
phone
okay?
paid. I know one damn thing. Y'all better go ask Mike because it wasn't us.
Okay. Let's stay further back there, okay?
Huh?
Let's stay further back. What's her name?
My name's Shawanda.
Shawanda? What's yours? What's your name?
Ricardo. William Ricardo, sir.
What is it?
William Ricardo.
Ricardo.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, man. Ask Mr. Adam about me. I just did some business with him, man.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
They gave me some, too. I tore that shit up.
Give you some what?
Fake money, man.
Who gave it to you?
Told me, somebody, I don't know, whoever the fuck asked for change or something to get some fuck ass. See, where the man told me, hey, that's fake. All right, cool. You see mine, I tore this shit up right there. And he came out and started telling that dude, yeah. And I told him, the dude told him. And he told him to come back in the car, come back in the store. But he was talking, figure it out. Yeah, he was like, what the fuck? Why would where I'm gonna get some fake money from?
If I could ever choose the belt, 2114 has the belt about a priority property damage possibly intoxicated and possible.
So Ricardo, how are you related to Floyd? How you know him?
He used to do security work at the Salvation Army, man.
How do you know him?
I don't know him. I'm telling you now, right there.
Okay.
Security work.
So how are you guys together then?
We was getting a ride. Yeah. And I was getting
Oh, okay, so you two are together.
No, I seen him in the store too, but that's my ex. You know
Okay.
what I'm saying?
How do you two know each other? How do you not know him when he said he's with you?
No, he was getting a ride from him too, and he told me, come on, he'll give me a ride.
Okay. Just stay put then.
I don't need it because my daughter does.
All right, that's good.
Is this her right here?
I'll stay put, all right?
Yeah, because he was fighting, because he over there fighting.
It's making it more difficult.
Right. Damn, that's...
He's making it more difficult.
I know, I think he got shot. He was falling asleep a little bit, and then when he woke up, they was up at the door. How you doing? Yeah, then he started saying, please don't shoot me. Right. That's why I had my hands showing.
Officer, do you see the individual on the left hand walking by?
Oh, yes.
You had no interaction with her at this point?
No.
You'd agree that this is at 123 and 17Z of your body camera footage?
Yes.
Yeah, I had my hands showing though, but Mr. Adam in the store about to be. Me too. We already know.
Who's Adam?
I spent my money. I paid for my phone. I was getting a laptop and it didn't work, so he gave me my funds back.
Okay.
You can come in and talk to him.
Okay, sure.
You mind if I get my little mask?
Where is it? What is it?
My COVID mask.
Where is it?
Right here.
Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead. Let's make it quick. Face me.
Huh?
Face me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I hope you motherfuckers don't get us in trouble for nothing. I can in trouble. I don't got no warrant.
That's good. If you guys are no warrants or nothing, then after all this is settled, you guys good to go out.
All this is settled. Can't y'all just ask him?
Wait, don't you hear your friend talking? Yelling over there? I can see him yelling and talking. He's making
talk to the store person.
Well, I'm waiting for my partners.
Yeah, for the store.
Gotta talk to my partners, see what's up.
He said he knew them too, so I was asking him, did he know them? He said I know him very well, all of them.
Floyd. You know Floyd?
Yeah, but I'm talking about I know the people in the store very well.
Okay, that's good.
212 has the closest available. If you could start for an assault at next door to 2313 Washington Street Northeast. There's a black male assaulting a female. Copy.
Officer, I'm just gonna look right here at the door, just see if I left any car right here.
All right, that's it, man, Ricardo. Just the door. All right?
Yeah.
Nobody's come close to us, so right now we don't need a mask yet.
Huh?
So right now nobody's come close to us, so we're good with the mask.
Oh, that he called her? Did he call her? Floyd called her? Huh? Is it a white girl? Yeah. She's short? Yeah, right here.
Stay put, guys. All right? I want to be involved in that.
Like, suspect is sitting in the
Just let us go.
The victim is crying, and the suspect has a gun. You can use that as a female.
They did something to him.
All right, let's stay here, all right?
They did something because them motherfuckers taking pictures over there. Yeah, I'm on the phone. Man, everybody recording this shit, man.
330 EMS is at Portland and 36.
I don't know. I doubt it if he is. This guy here got us. Mr. Chief.
Copy, I was just giving you their updated location there. Stay around.
I wish Mr. Chang had just go let us walk in with him with Mr. Adam. Just goddamn.
Let's stay put here. All right, tell my partners and I'm done over there and they can figure things out. We'll figure things out, all right? Right now, we're grabbing an ambulance for your buddy, for Florida, okay?
Fuck.
So he might have hurt himself.
They hurt him?
He might have hurt himself. All right? Who knows?
Something happened, an ambulance here, everything. Can I just see what
No,
y'all did
this-
to him?
Shawanda,
He on the ground and everything.
stay over here, okay?
He on the ground? Yeah, Where?
Right here. No, I was talking to the people.
Sergeant acknowledged 92602 Bloomington.
Shawanda. What was that?
I said, y'all go one of the store guys.
Okay, let's stay put. We'll figure it out, right, Ricardo? I'm not getting you guys any problems, right?
Why is he going to the hospital?
Oh, man.
Shawanda, you're not helping.
I'm just trying to figure out what's
As we both know, it's
Once my partners get over here, they can explain to you guys, okay?
We got a make on the vehicle. I'm with a tan SUV at Lowry Fifth.
I'll try to get that. Both going to be out with 22. Copy.
He needs his phone.
Where's his phone?
It's in the car.
We'll take the car, okay? Nope, I don't want you reaching the car, okay?
It's right there on the seat.
He'll get to his car once he's done with that, okay? His car is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right here.
Don't go into the car.
It's the front seat, sir.
I don't want you guys going to the car. That's it. Well, once my partners come over here, you guys can ask, right? What? Let's go straight, man. It's tight here. You guys good? Oh. I don't know.
Officer Chang, pausing the video for a second, you'd agree that the ambulance appears to be leaving at 1:30:21 on your body-worn cam?
Yes.
Let's wait for the 320. Here's a book, man. Yeah, are you guys good with diesel?
I'm going to double check.
Here's a book. Here's a notebook.
You want to get his phone? Yeah. In the car? Yeah, it's right down the
His phone.
sir. That's
He's already gone. He doesn't need his phone. Is that his phone? Put his phone back.
Yeah, put his phone back. He's gonna.
He's gone already. He went to the hospital.
Tell him where it is.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Put his phone back. That's it.
You know him, bro? Yeah. What's up?
You might have called his family or something. I watched the whole thing for that. I ain't even. What happened? Why he in the
So I didn't talk to them yet. You're part of it.
Okay. You ran him though?
Nope.
No, that man took our name.
So supposedly your partner has his
What
ID.
happened to him?
Fucked up. All right.
Ask your partner if your partner needs it in order.
He took your ID? Yeah.
He's sick.
They kept it put on it. They kept it. I already know what he told us.
What?
I tried to get him to get in the car. I tried. I told him he can't win. Go on, get in the car. I kept telling him that. Bro, you can't win, bro. Get in the car. Because I know you can't win. I don't need anything from them.
They're good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you guys are good.
Two things I don't fuck with.
Well, he said these two are good, but I'm not too sure about this.
Can I take Sylvia's car?
What?
That's Sylvia's truck. That's our friend Sylvia.
Okay.
Ex-co-worker. Well, let me try. If I get her phone, I can call her and tell her, sir.
Oh, the car's going to stay put right here until we figure it out.
Well, you better lock it because his phone's sitting right there.
Can I
Oh,
tell
oh.
Sylvia?
Just stay put. My partner's going to come back. I don't know what the plan is with the car.
Hey, you mind if I just get his phone? Okay.
I don't want you guys touching the car.
Officer Chang, you'd agree that the timestamp on your body-worn camera when the fire truck arrives is 1:32 and 50 seconds Z, correct?
Yes.
I didn't hear anybody call. Sorry. Different call.
I don't think it's related.
Okay. I think this car, when I got here, the doors were open, so they're involved, but I don't know. So, is he on his 10 days? Or?
I think they're done.
Okay. Are you still red?
Is that?
You still red? Oh.
Yeah. So, that group over is being hostile.
Yeah.
If you could let MFD know that EMS needs, the fire needs to go to parking 36 station in the full rest now.
So is it parking 36?
Don't say something. You got it now. You're good. You're talking to me.
Can you advise the fire department if they're still with you, they need to go to 36 and park with this with the people on full rest?
No. I gotta get him in the car. I gotta go get you. Huh? Yeah, and I gotta get him in the car. I gotta get him.
Officer Chang, you'd agree that now the fire truck appears to be leaving, correct?
Yes.
Timestamp on your video is 1:35:06Z, correct?
Yes.
And are subject to the court's ruling. Now, a few follow-up questions here, Officer Chang, for you. It seems to me that you're walking around quite a bit. Can you explain why?
It's pacing back first to make sure that, I was concerned for the officer safety because of the crowd. So I just want to make sure that the officers were okay.
Did you observe other people at other locations besides where Mr. Floyd and the officers were?
You can say at least one at every corner of the intersection.
Did you observe people standing in the Speedway parking lot?
Yes.
And there were one or two people on the corner where you guys were?
Yes.
And at least one person across the street to the west, right?
Yes.
Southwest corner. Now, in terms of the general area, would you describe that as a pretty busy intersection?
Yes. Traffic and foot traffic, yeah.
So a fair number of cars, vehicles traveling through that intersection?
Yes.
As well as a fair number of people on bikes or on foot walking past?
Yes.
All right. Ultimately, did this pretty much end your involvement in this case?
Yes, that's correct.
So you pretty much went back to your regular duties with the park police, correct?
Yes.
All right. Based on that, Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Officer Chang.
Good morning.
Just a few follow-up questions for you. In the video we just watched, at one point when you were talking with Officer Tao, it sounded to me like you asked him, still red?
Yes.
What is that what you said?
Yes.
What does that mean?
If his body camera is still on.
And so you were asking him if his was on?
Yeah.
And that's because you had yours on still.
Yes.
And so, Officer Chang, when you're working for the Minneapolis Park Police, you go through the academy with city police recruits, correct?
Yes.
And at that point, when you're going through the academy, do you know whether you're going to end up in the park police or the city police?
When you first start the academy, you already know who. Sorry, you already know who you're, I guess, working for. I guess.
So, as far as you know, those recruits, you could be working with them someday in the future.
I guess on a straight, I mean, if we patrol the same area or precinct, yes, but.
Right, but when you start, you could end up being a city officer just like them.
No.
Okay.
So when you first start, I guess you already get the offer from the employer. So I already received the offer from Minneapolis Park Police prior to starting the academy.
Okay, now I got it. So when you're in the academy, you know you're going to be park police and the others may be city police.
Yes.
All right. But when you get out there on the streets, while you monitor the parks, you also have authority to assist with calls outside of the parks.
Yes.
So in terms of an average shift, let's say, how often do you do this where you assist on a city police call?
Not often, unless we're close by, unless we don't, I guess there's no calls at the parks, but we pretty much keep ourselves busy with the park system.
But if you self-assign to help a city call, you're not going to get in trouble from your supervisor for that.
No.
Because that's all part of your responsibilities. You're allowed to do that.
Yes.
And in fact, when you're doing that, when you're working in the park police, you have the same radio traffic. You're able to hear the same radio traffic as the city police officers.
Yes.
And in fact, I think we heard you refer to the city officers here as your partners, correct?
Yes.
So when you're there, you look to them as your partners in working this scene.
Yes.
And you would suspect that they feel the same way about you, I assume.
Yes.
Okay. And with this particular call, you heard a request for backup, right, on this call?
Yes.
And because you heard some noise in the background, you decided initially to go lights and sirens.
Yes.
And to self-assign, I think was the term you used.
Yes.
Okay. And at some point, though, on your way there, you turned off your lights and sirens, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that was before you actually arrived.
Yes.
And when you arrived, I think we even heard as you're pulling up, the officers already assigned call code 4, correct?
Yes.
And what is your understanding, or back on May 25th of 2020, what was your understanding about what code 4 means?
Scene safety.
So it's under control, correct?
Yes.
All right. And when you got there, you get out of your squad car, correct?
Yes.
And you see 2 city officers.
Yes.
And one who you later find out is Officer Chang.
Yes.
Is speaking with Mr. Floyd.
Yes.
And Mr. Floyd is sitting on the sidewalk against the Dragon Walk.
Yes.
He doesn't appear to be threatening in any way at that time, does he?
No.
Doesn't appear to be agitated or upset in any way at that time.
No.
So right there sitting on the sidewalk, he was pretty peaceful.
Yes.
And when that happened, you never heard the officers call for a code 3 to other officers responding.
No.
So they did not call the code 3, correct?
No.
That's we're doing this question thing. You heard later there was a call for code 3 on the ambulance, the EMS, correct?
Yes.
But there was never a call for code 3 for the responding officers.
I don't believe so, no.
And when you arrived and got out, I assume you were trained to assess the situation, correct?
Yes.
And you did that as you're getting out of your squad car?
Yes.
And when you did that, did you hear Officer King ask Mr. Floyd for his name?
I did, yes.
And you heard Mr. Floyd give his full name?
Yes.
Spell it?
Yes.
And his date of birth?
I believe so, yes.
And then you were asked to run that through your system, and you were able to do that, correct?
Yes.
So, then you observed as the officers, Lane and King, walked Mr. Floyd over to their squad car, correct?
Yes.
And that's when you decided to move your squad car over to that area, correct?
Yes.
And your intention there was to help those two officers with what they were doing.
Correct.
But as soon as you got out, they asked you to go watch the scene by the Dragon Walk with the two passengers.
Yes.
And you did that. You then walked back over to that location.
Yes.
And once you walked back over there, you really couldn't see what was going on with Officers Lane and King and Mr. Floyd in front of the Cup Foods.
I believe at that time they were still had Floyd against the car. I believe during that time, yes.
Okay, so against the driver's side of their squad car.
I believe so, yes.
But once you walked over to the far side of the road, over by the Dragon Walk, you could no longer see what was going on with Mr. Floyd.
Yeah, yes.
You indicated that the crowd was getting louder and more aggressive, correct?
Yes.
And but you knew that there were now 4 officers over at that scene, correct?
Correct, yes.
And so your main focus was on watching those passengers.
Yes, in the car.
And you assumed when you were doing that those 4 officers were okay over there because there were 4 of them, correct?
Yes.
And if they had radioed for help, you would have heard it over your radio.
Yes.
And they never radioed for help, did they?
No.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Anything further? Thank you. You are excused. Thank you. Members of the jury, we're going to take a 10-minute break while we check the availability of the next witness. It'll probably be our last break before we break for lunch. And Counsel Chambers? Nelson, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, for the record, the defense recalls Officer Nicole McKenzie.
We'll just read it, yes. Raise your hand. You swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes, Your Honor.
And let's have you state and spell your full name again so the court reporter has it.
Certainly. Nicole, Nicole, last name McKenzie, Mackenzzie.
Okay, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. McKenzie.
Morning.
Officer, I apologize. I'm sorry. You've previously testified in this case, correct?
I have.
And just to refresh the jury's recollection, what is your role again with the Minneapolis Police Department?
I'm the medical support coordinator for the department.
Okay. And in terms of...
Actually, could you take your mask down?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the training that you provide to officers, fair to say that the training consists of both academy training and veteran officer training called in-service?
Yes, sir.
And in terms of the training that your department provides, does your department provide excited delirium training to officers in the academy?
In the academy, yes.
And that's not something that routinely is given to the veteran officers?
Correct.
All right. Now, you understand that Officer Lane, who is a part of this case, recently attended the academy.
Correct, yes.
And he would have seen the materials that the Minneapolis Police Department provided relevant to excited delirium.
Yes, sir.
And you've had an opportunity and you've reviewed the PowerPoint presentations that are prepared in that regard?
I have.
Do you want the instruction?
Members of the jury,
You're about to receive evidence regarding excited delirium training that was received by Officer Lane at the police academy. This is being offered for the limited purpose of explaining why he used the phrase excited delirium on May 25th, 2020, and what that meant to him. This is not being offered as state of mind or knowledge of the defendant, since we have no indication in the record that this defendant, Mr. Chauvin, took this training. So accept it only for that limited purpose regarding Officer Lane. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. So just going to show you, this has been pre-marked as Exhibit 1053. Does this appear to be the training materials the Minneapolis Police Department provides for officers, cadets in the academy?
It does.
Does it, and just skipping through, does this appear to be a accurate copy of that?
It appears to be so.
And I'll just kind of scan through fast. To be pretty much the entirety of that training?
It looks like it, yes.
Okay. And can you just describe for the jury generally what excited delirium is as you train it?
Certainly. It's a condition that's a combination of a variety of different medical issues that are happening at the same time. This could be something like psychosis, agitated delirium. It could be a pressurized speech, incoherent speech, superhuman strength, hyperthermia. They could all be present.
Okay. And does the Minneapolis Police Department train cadets? What types of things cause excited delirium?
In a general sense, yes. Okay. It's a combination of pre-existing factors. It could be cardiovascular disease, also illicit drug use, and also mental health diagnoses.
Okay. And in terms of the signs that officers are trained to look for, could you describe what those are?
Yeah, we do use an acronym to correlate with that, and we use the acronym of not a crime. So there's varying different things you might see if somebody's presenting with excited delirium, like the person, because they are experiencing hyperthermia, meaning excessive temperature, they might be removing their clothing, they might be speaking incoherently. Whether it's a bystander or the caller, they might describe the person had just snapped. And if I could reference my materials, I can go through them a little more in detail.
So for purposes and subject to the state's objection, the defense moves to introduce Exhibit 1053.
Subject to the court's rulings, 1053 is received.
You see the first letter of your acronym, not a crime, before you?
Yes.
And what does that stand for?
The patient might present as naked or sweating, removing their clothing.
Okay. And the second slide being, or excuse me, the next letter being O?
Yes, and that's objects, exhibiting violence towards objects.
Okay. T?
Is tough and unstoppable.
And that's what you described as like superhuman strength?
Yes, sir.
A?
The onset is acute.
What does that mean?
And that's where somebody will say the patient just snapped.
Okay. So it's rapid or fast?
Right.
C?
The patient is confused. Might be speaking incoherently.
R?
Resistant.
And define that?
That the person will likely not be able to, they don't have a capability about them to respond to commands, to comply.
Okay. And I?
Incoherent.
And how would you define incoherent in this sense?
If somebody's like experiencing some level of psychosis, they might be talking about complete nonsense. Their words just don't even make sense, and there's really no dialogue you can have with them, meaningful dialogue you can have with a person.
Okay. And M?
That'd be mental health. The person or callers have some kind of information that leads to believe there's some mental health issues going on.
Okay. And E?
And that EMS should be requested early.
It's fair to say that if an officer suspects excited delirium as occurring with a suspect, there are certain steps that they are encouraged to do, correct?
Correct.
Can you define what an officer should do if they encounter a suspect they suspect is suffering from excited delirium?
Definitely get more resources started, because you might need more resources than you would think, and then also having EMS stage at a safe distance away until the situation's under control.
And obviously attempt to control the subject?
Correct.
Through physical restraint?
Yes.
It's fair to say that once a person is in handcuffs under the excited delirium, you train officers to put that suspect in the recovery position, agreed?
Correct.
And what would be the purpose of bringing EMS on scene?
Because people that are experiencing the excited delirium syndrome, they can rapidly go into cardiac arrest.
And that's how you train Minneapolis police cadets, correct?
Correct.
Now, again, as far as veteran officers, they may not see this particular training materials, correct?
They would not.
But is excited delirium a subject that is discussed in in-service trainings generally?
It has been in the past, but that was not with the medical support team.
So in terms of use of force or other questions or other areas of training?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Mr. Frank.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer McKenzie, I have just a few follow-up questions for you. So the basic training on excited delirium with cadets or recruits, is what to look for,
Correct.
and then secondly, what things they can do.
Correct.
And one of the things that they are told to do is to put the person in the side recovery position, correct?
That is correct.
And that's to help facilitate breathing.
Yes.
Because excited delirium, if it exists, could compromise proper breathing.
Absolutely, yes.
And officers, both in the academy and veteran officers, are trained on CPR.
Yes.
And so they are also trained that they have an obligation if someone becomes pulseless or unresponsive to initiate measures such as CPR.
Yes, sir.
And that would be true of, as I said, veteran officers as well, correct?
Correct. It's our policy.
And cadets like Officer Lane received CPR training, correct?
Yes, sir.
And an officer like Mr. Chauvin would have received CPR training on a regular basis.
Yes.
You were asked about the acronym to help identify potential markers of this condition.
Yes.
Would you defer to an emergency room doctor on whether someone is actually experiencing excited delirium?
Absolutely. It's not our place to diagnose that.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, officer. You are excused now. Thank you. Your next witness is available after lunch. What time?
By 12:30, 12:45.
All right, members of the jury, we're going to take our lunch break and let's reconvene at 1:15. We'll see you then.